Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we'll be doing another Sharks season in review, this time of the 13-14 season from a different setting, as you can tell. So the Sharks came out of the 2013 playoffs with a second round exit at the hand of the Los Angeles Kings in 7 games, but it was actually a pretty decent finish for what people were expecting from the Sharks. Of course, the 2010 and 2011 playoffs ended with Western Conference final appearances for the Sharks, but it was the 2012 playoffs that really made people start to think that the Sharks window had closed, their players had gotten too old, and the years that the Sharks were dominant in the regular seasons and were forced to be reckoned with in the playoffs had come to an end. But the 2013 season had begun to really prove to people that maybe the window hadn't actually slammed shut on the Sharks. Until coming into this 2014 season, there was some hype. And with how the Sharks performed during the season, you could see why. The Sharks actually ended up with a very solid record, 51, 22, and 9 for a total of 111 points. If not for the Anaheim Ducks having a somehow even better season than that, the Sharks would have been atop of the Pacific Division, and they actually would have avoided a first-round matchup with the Kings, because this, of course, the 13-14 season was the first year for the new divisional reform in the NHL, putting all the teams in the same situation, the same divisions and conferences as we currently see this season as well, I guess, without the Vegas Golden Knights. Also during the season, it was the rookie season of Tomas Hertl. Of course, had that electrifying third game of his in his career, getting 4 goals against the Rangers with that beautiful goal as the 4th one. Unfortunately, came to a close a bit early due to Dustin Brown knee-on-knee collision. Really at the height of the Los Angeles Kings-San Jose Sharks rivalry, you could see why Sharks fans really disliked Dustin Brown at the time and continue to do so at the moment. It was also when Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau's contracts were extended around the mid-season to go 3 more years until the 16-17 season. And coming to the end of the year, it would be another matchup with the Kings in the first round, the third time in 4 seasons the Sharks would meet the Kings in the playoffs. However, now the divisions had really been designed for something like this to happen. In the regular season, the points leaders, it was Pavelski leading the way, having played all 82 games with 41 goals, his first 40-goal season of his career, as well as 38 assists for 79 points. Then it would be Joe Thornton, also 82 games played, 11 goals for 65 assists and 76 points. Patrick Marleau would be next, of course, another 82-game season for himself with 33 goals, 37 assists for 70 points. Couture would be next, unfortunately missed a good chunk of the season, having only played 65 games, and as such, only put up 23 goals and 31 assists for 54 points. Brent Burns playing right wing most of that season, I believe actually maybe the entirety of the season, if I'm not mistaken. He's got 22 goals, 26 assists for 48 points, and then it would be Tommy Wingels, an unlikely suspect here as the 6th highest point scorer for the Sharks, 16 goals, 22 assists for 38 points. Antti Niemi was, of course, the starter here again for the San Jose Sharks, starting 64 games, 39 wins, 2.39 GA, and a .913 save percentage. So pretty decent stats. Goals against average and save percentage, you could definitely say were slightly above average, but certainly not as strong as he was in the previous regular season, the 12-13, where he was a Vezina finalist. Now, one thing to mention is that the Sharks' backup goaltender that season, Alex Stalock, had performed superbly in the 18 games that he actually started, putting up very, very good stats with a sub 2.0 GAA, and that will come into effect when the playoffs would come around. So moving on to that, as I said, the Kings would be faced off against the Sharks. The Kings were 3rd place in the Pacific Division in a regular sort of 1-8 format. Technically, the Sharks would not have met the Los Angeles Kings in the first round. However, they would have met the Chicago Blackhawks in the first round. Who knows if that actually would have gone any better or any worse than this one did, but it would be the Kings matchup, as I said, 3rd time in 4 years, and this series started off very well for the Sharks. The first 2 games were pretty big wins, a 6-3 victory and a 7-2 victory, both games at home, and it really set the tone for this series. The Sharks had come to play. During the 3rd game, while it was definitely a lot closer, the Sharks would still end up squeaking out the victory with an overtime game winner from Patrick Marleau to take a 3-0 series lead. Now, before this series had occurred, there were only been 3 other reverse series in NHL history. However, the most recent one was pretty close, 2010, in which the Flyers had reverse swept the Boston Bruins on their road to a Stanley Cup Finals appearance. It should also be noted that the Sharks were not in necessarily uncharted territory here, as of course, back in the 2011 series season, they had faced off against the Detroit Red Wings. They took a 3-0 series lead there, and it ended up having to go all 7 games before the Sharks managed to finish it out and move on to the third round. So it's not as though the Sharks didn't know what to expect with a 3-0 series lead. Of course, you could also just point to the previous season, in which the Sharks had a 3-0 lead against the Vancouver Canucks and closed it out in just 4 games. So again, not uncharted territory, but game 4 would come around and the Sharks would end up losing it 6-3. This was in Los Angeles. It was going to be the final game of the series if the Sharks had won, so not a huge surprise. Come game 5, however, it was a bit of a turning point. Not only would the Kings get their first victory on the road in this series, but Marc-Edouard Vlasic would actually get injured off of a hit from Jarrett Stoll, and unlike in the previous series last season, when it would be Raffi Torres actually hitting Jarrett Stoll and he would get the suspension for the entirety of the series, Jarrett Stoll wouldn't be given any supplemental discipline, and Marc-Edouard Vlasic would not appear in any of the last 2 games of the series, and he didn't even end up playing the majority of that 5th game. So certainly a turning point in the series, as the Kings would take that one and make it only a 3-2 Sharks lead. Come game 6, Antti Niemi had not been playing particularly well even in the victories for the San Jose Sharks, and so Todd McLellan made the very bold move to try and start Alex Stalock. As I said, during the regular season, Stalock had very, very good stats, and during the 6th game, he actually was pretty decent. It was a 1-1 tie for a good chunk of it until we came to about the last half of the 3rd period, and it was Justin Williams who scored, in my opinion, a pretty controversial goal. He pokes this puck through the pads of Alex Stalock to take a 2-1 goal lead for the Los Angeles Kings. If it had been scored in the past couple of years where there was the goaltender interference challenge, maybe that goal gets overturned, but at the time it did not get overturned, and the Sharks would end up losing that game 4-1, unfortunately, with, in my opinion, that Justin Williams goal being a very big turning point of the game. So we would go into a game 7, Sharks Kings. Once again, it would be in San Jose this time, unlike the previous year where it was in Los Angeles, and after a scoreless first period with Niemi back in nets, the Sharks would actually get the first goal of the game early in the 2nd period to give Sharks fans maybe a bit of hope before it was completely taken away. The Kings would score 5 unanswered goals and would win the game 5-1 and the series 4-3 on their road to actually winning the Stanley Cup that year. Of course, the Kings ended up participating in one of the best series of memories, the Kings Blackhawks 2014 Western Conference Finals. A couple goals go the other way, and maybe the Sharks are a part of that series with the Blackhawks, and maybe the Sharks can actually make a run for the Stanley Cup against the New York Rangers in that Stanley Cup Finals, but unfortunately, it didn't end up being the case, and it created a lot of turmoil in the offseason for the San Jose Sharks. But before I get into that, the playoffs leading scorers, it was Patrick Marleau, all 7 games played for every single one of these forwards, 3 goals, 4 assists for 7 points. Then Joe Pavelski, 2 goals, 4 assists for 6 points. James Shepard making an unlikely appearance here with 2 goals, 4 assists, and 6 points as well. Tomas Hertl managed to come back for the playoffs, 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points. Matt Nieto as well, an unlikely appearance, 2 goals, 3 assists, and 5 points. And then Dan Boyle with 0 goals, 4 assists, and 4 points. As I said, Niemi not very good at all in this series, at least in stark contrast to his 2013 series against the Los Angeles Kings. If the Sharks got Niemi's performance from that 2013 series in this series, they likely would have won very easily, but that was not the case. Only 6 games started because game 6 belonged to Stalock. 3 wins with just terrible stats, a 3.74 GAA and a .884 save percentage for Niemi. And so, as I said, turmoil in the offseason, what the Sharks were going to do. Niemi still had the extra year on his contract, so he would have to stick it out because it would be difficult to move him. Some people thought maybe Wilson had actually begun to regret having signed Marleau and Thornton to these extensions mid-season instead of waiting till the end of the year. And Doug Wilson had famously said that he was going to try and take a one step back to try and take 2 steps forward. Thornton would end up getting his captaincy removed, but all of that for the next video, which will be the 14-15 season, which of course is the one season, at least prior to this current one, 19-20, in which the Sharks actually missed the playoffs this decade. Class dismissed.